Alright. Well, it's December. I was actually supposed to do it at the start of December, but I kept procrastinating. Anyway, year 2 of the challenge series, even though it's... Okay, so terminology is we're year 2 referring to... because we wouldn't call it a season. It's just like 6 different championships. But... I didn't know what else to do, so I would call it year 2. Basing it kind of off like calendar years in Gran Turismo 4, more or less. But yeah. So we start, of course, with Tier A. 12 race schedule. I think it's most of the same tracks, but with shuffling of the order. Have Taylor with a new vehicle. She's no longer driving the Lotus Elise. She's now driving a 500 Assetto course, basically racing setup. A lot of the same drivers from before. Scott Webber is debuting. He's a Nissan Z fan by virtue, so he couldn't miss his chance to kind of show up majorly in a 370Z. And down here is where you'll find the major debutantes, I think that's the word, of this particular season, or this particular year of the Challenge Series. I'm going to start from the bottom and working up. Michael Krieger works typically more under Thrasher's group. He is their kind of BMW sedan / coupe driver. And Pablo Hernandez would basically be my equivalent to him. Although Hernandez prefers kind of older M3s than E92, but that one's not competitive. Of course, Tyler, who... I couldn't think of a place to put him in before, but now he's here. He will be in a couple of other tiers, but he's an American car guy. Unfortunately, he's not the biggest fan of Corvettes, which is like the only American car really here. And then there's Linne Chitose, which is sort of an odd case. It's, if you could figure out from the name, it's the same person that just debuted in the SRS as the 22 car, except it's also not the same person because technically Challenge Series doesn't treat external characters as external characters. It's just treated as an identity in the Challenge Series itself, with Nitoria being the only exception to that, as she is the only one still treated as, you know, having the personality and other traits and whatever that makes her, you know, who she is even in the world of Touhou Project. She is through and through the same character here as she is there, and the same character in Slipstream Racing Series as she is here or in Touhou Project itself. But she's the exception to that rule. Any other outside characters that are referenced or alluded to are considered separate entities from whatever character that they're supposed to be. So this Isabella is named after and is a direct reference to Isabella from Phineas and Ferb. Now that's a driver in the Slipstream Racing Series, but here is considered a different, different character. Different not only from the one in SRS, but also different from the one in the original show itself. That's why her last name is different. Her last name is obviously a clear reference to the show, but it's still not technically the correct last name. So it's a different character with a slightly different personality. Same thing here for Natsuki Narashi. It's a reference to Natsuki from Doki Doki Literature Club, but that character doesn't actually have a last name. So she has one here, and therefore I consider it to be a different character. Same case for Linne, the one from Under Night, doesn't have a last name. She has one here, And there's the last name's a reference to something else into the game, but it's not actually her last name. So I would consider it a separate character from the one in the Slipstream Racing series, or the one from the actual game itself. I don't know if I make that clear enough, but I really couldn't explain it much better than that. So yeah, this is the kind of episode structure. Tier A is unique. It uses shorter courses, shorter layouts for a lot of tracks. Not all of them, though. Yeah, like you're not going to see Silverstone International or Highlands Short or Brands Hatch Indy much outside of Tier A. The general plan, we have the same 6 tiers: C, D, E, E. C, what, Riker? A, B, C, D, E, S. I can talk. That's something else. And then, now, each season, or each year, is going to have a 1-make race, but that's for later. This year, it's Lamborghini Aventadors for the 1-make model. Next year, might be something different. Yeah, just assume that the challenge series is just kind of going in between years. Every time, every time the 6 tiers are completed is a different calendar year in the challenge series, but not obviously, a challenge series run isn't exclusive to a specific series, or to a, it's not like this is challenge series 2021 or anything, and the next time will be 2022. No. They could be a month apart for all it matters. It's just a matter that assume that a calendar year has passed in the world of this particular series. But speaking of past, it is time to begin the first race of the challenge series. For year 2, it is 4 laps of Laguna Seca. You're on the starting grid of Laguna Seca, and, well, the game is not really going to help Thrasher's case here at his home track. He's one of very few characters to have a home track. There are others. Gina was born in Italy, so Monza is her home track. I do believe it would be considered that Dedrick Schwartz, he's not here, but he's German. He was born not far from Hockenheimring. However, that's not on this game, so... You can read the starting grid. There's nothing major to report on yet because there's no points battle. The game is trying to throw a small wrench in the works by putting Natsuki in the A86 so far up the grid. Gina's already taking off with second because, well, she didn't have to start behind the 86. Pablo Hernandez is the highest qualifying debut driver. And this overtake should be about as easy as you can want it. Yeah, there it is. Natsuki may be one of the better drivers overall in the series, but you just kind of can't really compete with, you can't compete against an E92 BMW and an AE86. It just doesn't work that way. Isabella's getting a little forceful over here. Interesting that the Lotus Elise of all cars is the one that's trying to push people around. As it is very, touch and go back here. Linnae, in her debut, not exactly having the best start. She's down in 12th. She started 9th. Also, I do believe I regulated all of the points so that it's no longer top 8 score, now it is top 10, as is the case with every other championship that runs under the Challenge Series itself. So the kind of overview of each vehicle's different vehicle's like strengths, weaknesses, and basic racing game plan, as it were. And we have the Mustang here, which is the quintessential sort of high power, low cornering choice. It probably gets the highest top speed by far out of anything in the category, but is a big Ford Mustang, and therefore doesn't exactly have the agility of some other cars. Mazda RX-7, I'd probably call the kind of like complete package for a car in Tier A. Decent acceleration, like kind of higher tier top speed rating, but greatly benefits from having much better cornering from being a pretty lightweight Japanese car. E92 is just kind of like a less polarized version of the Mustang. It has really good acceleration, but obviously not as much top speed and slightly better cornering than the Mustang. The AE86, which is somehow still in 4th place because Isabella has still not found a way by it. I mean, it has decent handling, but it's just kind of here. There's a couple of cars like this in this tier that just kind of exist. Then we have the Lotus Elise, which is basically just the improved AE86. About the same handling, about the same power figures, maybe slightly less, slightly more, but has way more handling, so it can do things like that, and it accelerates better because it's lighter. The Z4, it's just kind of a slightly more powerful Lotus Elise with almost the same handling. The acceleration is much worse because of its weight, though. Now the floodgates have opened. Now Natsuki has been kind of left open to being overtaken over and over again. The Supra seems like it'd be a kind of higher power alternative to the RX-7, but really it doesn't get to a much higher speed than the RX-7 does, and the handling's way worse on it. Taylor's Abarth 500, it's just kind of like it's what the AE86 wishes it was. A decent power, decent acceleration, very unique as it's front-wheel drive, which nothing else in the category can say that. And handling like that means you can just do things like that to people in it, but its top speed is pitiful. Here's the ultimate, pretty much the go-kart option. Almost no horsepower to speak of. I think it's literally something like 135 horsepower. But handling is almost perfect. If this car starts on the front of a grid and we're not at a track like Monza, this thing can steal a couple of wins probably. And then the last vehicle, and not really the worst vehicle, because that's definitely the 8.6, but a close second to the 370Z Nismo. Yeah, it has power, but it's just sluggish overall, and the AI is not good at driving it very fast, I don't think. Natori positively has run away with this race. She's going to win by probably over 5 seconds. Pablo is going to be right at Gina's doorstep, but he's run out of laps, so unless he tries something desperate into the last corner, it'll be third for him, but it's his first race in this division of the Challenge Series, so nothing to laugh at for him. He didn't even make an attempt, as Michael Krieger got himself to 4th in the same vehicle that Pablo has, starting 12th. Oh my god. Curly Thrasher was not full of it when he convinced me to get to kind of get this guy in here. This guy is crazy. Oh, Natsuki still scores. But, I mean, she started second at Laguna Seca. I would kind of hope so. So, yeah, you can see it's now top 10 score. Last time we hit Tier A, it was only the top 8. Now it is time for one of the races that I could really only describe as one-off. Silverstone International. On the starting grid for Silverstone, and well, the game clearly has no sympathy for the BMW drivers. It does seem to have sympathy for the Mustang drivers, though, despite the fact that I don't think they needed it, considering one of them won the last race. It would be a better chance for Tyler and Thrasher to demonstrate what they can do, however, so... One of the most notable drivers missing in this tier is Hikari. Did not show up this time. Which kind of surprised me that Akira did, but Hikari chose to skip on Tier A. I don't know whether he thought it just wasn't worth his time, or if he just couldn't be bothered. Maybe he wasn't in the mood. I don't know. I mean, there's no definitive requirement. It's not like a structured thing like a NASCAR or a Formula 1 where you have to show, oh, what the heck happened back here? So Krieger's got some car damage. I don't know who on earth he hit. But yeah, this isn't as tightly structured as a, you know, like a Formula 1 calendar. A driver does not have to attend every race or every tier in a season or, you know, calendar year. You can see the stunned lack of horsepower on that Miata. Even Natsuki's 8.6 just overtook it like it wasn't moving. But then it claps back with that, and then you realize that there is a reason why it's here. The lead has not changed, however, seeing that in the mirror must not be the greatest thing, because you are in a tiny little Lotus being tracked down by 2 Mustangs that have significantly more horsepower than you. And this track does have the long back straightaway, so it's not like the threat's null and void. Also, Nitori is in 5th, so I'm currently sandwiched by Ford. I hit a few corners, and suddenly Lene is in striking distance of 7th place. Then we reach the singular straightaway, and suddenly 9th place is within striking distance of her. And, oh, clearly I see who Krieger ran into. He ran into Natsuki on the first lap. But yeah, because of the way that Challenge Series is structured, it's kind of a divisional tournament style rather than a, you know, a laid out schedule. is obviously a driver doesn't have to commit to every single tier of every single calendar year. You can pick and choose the ones that mean a little more to you, or the ones that you're better suited to run in. Hikari and his vehicles of choice probably just didn't think that he had the power for it, considering he ran it last year and didn't really get much accomplished. His brother didn't do much more, but his brother's probably a little more dedicated to the cause than Hikari is himself. Isabella's feeling the pressure. She about missed that corner, and Tyler was just like, oh, on God? But now Tyler's missing the corner. Does Thrasher capitalize? No, he doesn't. So, someone who did capitalize is Nitori overtook me. So it's a Mustang 234, and I'm sure Isabella is beyond relieved that this race is over. Not only because she won the race, but because she doesn't have to have this brigade of automobiles behind her for any longer. And she must have gotten consumed on the straightaway or something. I don't know what the heck. I thought the track was a little longer than that. It wasn't. So, Nitori and Isabella are the main title rivals right now. Everybody else just kind of in there. I mean, obviously nothing's set in stone yet, but already establishing a gap as it's Thrasher's 7 points off his next opponent. Obviously, it's close for every driver behind Thrasher, but that's because we've only done 2 races. And while Silverstone was short, it was just shy of 4 minutes probably, compared to the 7 minutes almost that Laguna Seca probably ran for. This race is going to be plenty long, as the lap of the Barcelona Moto Circuit is over 2 minutes in these cars. Here on the starting grid for Barcelona, and, well, I mean, this would be certainly Linnea's chance, if she ever got one in this tier. However, Barcelona has a pretty long straightaway, so I don't really foresee her being able to make a ton out of it. Should be a chance to score a couple of points for herself, but I don't think she's going to be making off with too many of them. I believe it is Taylor who is the other driver who is yet to score. Taylor and I think Darius. I'm not sure. I should probably have looked, but I know Taylor hasn't scored because she hasn't started near the front in either race. I know darn well that 500 is capable of finishing well, it just has to qualify well. MX-5 is good off the line, but as you'll see here, that's about it. And I'm out of here. And Nitori is probably going to follow me. Nitori, who started 6th off the line, is already up to 3rd, and we've just hit turn 3. Thrasher and Pablo too wide in her mirror. Now it's time for a different roadster to suffer the fate of the several Mustangs. As the Thrasher missed turn 4, which caused Pablo to miss turn 4. And in Pablo's case, that might have cost him a position. Never mind, no it didn't. Based E92 acceleration. You can't stress enough that thing's handling is otherworldly, but cornering has nothing. So I don't think she'd ever be able to pass me. If she had like Scott Weber or Isabella on the front row with her, she could have won this race, but it put me there. Meaning I have a lot more horsepower, I get a better run into T1, and then I win instead. Man, this is a race to forget for these super drivers, that's for sure. The starting grid is doing its best to make Natsuki relevant in this tier. However, the car is by design not meant to be relevant. Because that's how she wanted things to work. Not even just that's how I wanted them to work. That's how she went about it. You can see the rate of closing there. As Tyler possibly gets around Natsuki, but he'll have to go the long way around for T2. I don't know how this is gonna stack up here. This is classic power versus cornering, but I think power will win this one. Taylor not having the best luck on track, but probably having the time of her life because this is apparently her dream car from her own mouth, so I'm going to assume it's not full of it. She's also been hit once or twice, so that's probably not helped. As you can see the massive amount of scratched off paint on the rear bumper. Again, Lene catches up to me, and again, I just drive away. However, she is definitely doing everything she would have to do to make sure she stayed in second place. So, she's not going down, but I don't really foresee her going up either. Even if she does try some weird stuff through here, it's not gonna matter. Interesting kind of battle of the Mazdas here, as you know, it's two Mazdas that have totally opposing game plans as to like what constitutes, you know, that vehicle's, you know, kind of basis for what it's trying to do on the track. As Pablo would like 4th place back. Yeah, Lene is the fastest car on the track, but does not have the power to ever overtake my car. So it's not really her fault, it's just kind of, you know, just kind of what happens. And Natsuki, now in 10th, has been overtaken by Isabella, and I can't imagine it takes long for Krieger to follow through. Yeah, he'll have a shot right here, and this is pretty much it for Natsuki's chances of scoring. Just about runs Natsuki off the road, in fact. Yeah?
Stay up and see your last one. She's coming this morning.
Oh, boy.
Okay?
Okay. What job did you need me for? Okay, I guess. So in the final corner, well, yeah, Linnae has proven that if the starting grid is nice to her, she has to play defensive is what it amounts to. You can't really gain places in this car. You just kind of have to start with those places and then keep them. It's like an F1 race almost, but way slower. And maybe that thing didn't have anywhere near as much top speed as I thought it did. That's probably its downfall. It's another cup car. It's not quite as slow as the MX-5, but it's still not fast. Nitori is definitely getting away with this one. It's very close behind her for 2nd through 6th, really. No, actually 2nd through 4th, honestly. And then it just kind of, it's a slow trickle down from there down to like 9th place. Who is the first one not really in that little contest. Now we get to an unusual course, a Highland Short, where even in these cars, a lap takes like 50 seconds. Not even that. Like obviously, well, sometimes in a faster car it would be less than that. Yeah, Taylor needs a good starting grid spot here, or she's not really gonna get any points out of this particular episode. At the start of the Highlands race, and well, the gods didn't seem to like Linnae finishing 2nd there, so they've just smacked her back down to 14th. She's not going to be able to get much higher in that car. Even with this track's kind of close quarters style in this particular layout. Taylor got an okay starting spot, but it's a BMW front row. Not really a ton else of note to look at. Nitori's in the middle-ish. She isn't really at a huge risk of losing a ton of ground in the championship. Bubba just about ran Miyaka right off the road. Definitely want some good suspension for this track. Suspension that can compress and, rebound and not totally throw off the entire car. Trying to hustle a Mustang through this city street must be a real problem. I can only fathom. Also, of course, the close quarters nature of this track makes it very difficult to actually pass each other, so... This definitely is one of those kind of starting grid races, I think. The two BMWs are just kind of escaping with this one. As the two Supras are kind of blocking everything else off. They're really poor handling, but just enough horsepower to, not get past on a track like this. Only just. Because otherwise, I have no doubt Thrasher would have tried by now. And Pablo is the faster car, so in a world where you could pass at this track, he'd be in the lead by now. Honestly, I think the novelty of this track is nice and all, but this just doesn't seem like it's really conducive to any kind of good events here. Like, how many position changes have actually happened here? a lot of flip-flops, but that's probably only coming off of the starting grid itself. I would be surprised if there's anyone that's moved up more than one position. Not drive. God. There's one person. Isabella's technically moved up 2 places. She's the only person who has done so. I bet Michael Krieger's not trying, but it just does not happen. Pablo is 1/4 of a second away from the leader, but has found absolutely no opening with which to change that statement. Also, the heavy Scotland fog is causing the lighting to freak out when you go down that little section there, so that's always nice. I just tried to move the Thrasher and I just selected Akira 2 extra times. I wasn't trying to do that. So Miyako is gonna win for probably her first time, because the Z4 isn't exactly the best car in the game. It's 2 BMWs followed by 2 Toyotas. And yeah. That was hardly a fulfilling event, to say the least. Our point should be a little bit closer. I don't know between who and who, but it's a 6-point difference. Pablo Hernandez is second in points in his debut championship. So he's leaving quite the impression. And that's it for the first episode of year 2. And you can see the track lineup for the next episode. Monza Classic, the short course that is, Brands Hatch Indy, the Club Circuit of Vallelunga, and the Short Circuit of Black Hat County, which even that short circuit isn't very short and it's still going to be a couple minutes per lap, so that's only a 2-lap race. But it is kind of preceded by 3 tracks with very short laps, so 5 laps apiece for both of these, despite the fact that the club circuit's not actually that short, I don't think.